Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. It's wonderful to be with you again. Another purpose conversation, which I view as exceptionally important. We have found another leader who found his purpose, and I'll introduce him in a moment. Just very briefly, Me Vision Academy or Me Vision is all about mobilizing purpose-driven individuals and successful leaders from all countries, in all sectors, and on all levels of various organizations. And our whole idea is to create one space where they all gather and mobilize and energize and inspire one another to go back. It's almost like a global digital country with no boundaries. They can then go back to their various countries and make a difference in their industries or sectors and on their levels and organizations. So we're mobilizing, it's a global effort, it's a global vision that we're extremely excited about. And that's why we're also happy to have with us today Professor Tal Edgars of GBSH Consult Group, and has been around all over the world, but also very involved in South Africa and on this continent. So, Del, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Adrian. Thank you.
Let's kick off with why is purpose, having one's purpose, finding one's purpose, why is it important?
I believe in finding purpose, one is able to consciously know why they're here on earth. But more often than not, it's not just about why you're here on earth, what role you play, and why it is important that you find it early enough, because we see a lot of people, and I keep saying it's like driving a car and putting your foot on the pedal, the brake pedal, but believing it's moving. I refer a lot of times to saying that there are people who die at 18 but live till they're 70 because they haven't really figured out why they're here. They haven't figured what they're doing towards contributing to the general populace. It would be a shame to die without making a major contribution to humankind, and each one of us plays that role. So finding your purpose ideally identifies you with that role of your contribution to humankind in another distinctive way.
And does finding one's purpose awaken the leader in you?
Might not, or it might. I think a lot of people would feel that purpose is leader-centric. I do think that purpose is attitude-centric, because at the end of the day, it's all based on what am I here for? What do I think I need to do about that? And so for me, leadership is completely not going to be, because in society today, we feel that leadership is a person-centric feature, while it should be something that is not. So we say the certain company did well because of a specific leader. We forget what the people represent. And so for me, purpose defines us in a collective responsibility to one another. And so leadership does the same. So yes, it could be that purpose will then define you as a leader. For others, purpose defines what becomes of the leader.
Because what happens when you discover your purpose? What happens with you as a person, as a human being? And maybe you can give us your own experience as you discovered your purpose. What did it do for you?
You move towards the attitudes of what your purpose is. And generally, you start to look at life from a very different perspective. For me, ideally, it was always, so I've played a couple of roles, both in the diplomatic, government and private sector. And one of the things that was clear is I work with people. That was the bottom line of it. Whether it is a role as a diplomat, whether it is a role as an executive, I worked with people. But the general understanding was not just to work with people, was understanding the semantics of where people come from. And working with people across Africa, you start to appreciate some of the social issues that are not brought to an executive table. And so my purpose was ideally to identify this in an area of knowledge management. So when you look at knowledge management, we don't produce a lot of knowledge. What are some of the discrepancies between social cohesion in Eastern Cape and in Johannesburg? And how do those affect the attitudes of our people when you try to prepare them for work? And eventually I started to design curriculums that made sense towards how do we really transform society? But we first of all have to identify some of those social constructs. So yes, in me identifying that, it made more sense why a conversation about people, a conversation about purpose, would always find me dealing with people from different social constructs, and not just from a tapestry of South Africa or Nigeria or Ghana or UK or the US, because we ignore these things, but they're enshrined as part of social transformation. So it enabled me not to label everybody with the same thinking, that it is easy for a person in Western Cape to have the same attitude as somebody in Johannesburg. And that has allowed me to appreciate the growth, to appreciate some of the nuances around society that are applied when you start to look at those kind of things. So yes, I do think that it applies for most people. Again, another thing was stories that are not told. So like what Me Vision is doing. Important part of knowledge management is documenting the stories of the people, because this lived experiences kind of shape a construct for other younger people to go back and say, well, look, this is what leadership looks like in 2025. What are some of the attitudes that led to that kind of leadership, and what will change? So I do feel purpose is important because it allows us all to have a social responsibility to each other. I have a responsibility to Adrian. Adrian has a responsibility to the general populace. Another person will pick that up and document this and cite it in research, that out of 200 leaders that Adrian was able to speak to, there was a common thread of a social consciousness that allowed people to say, I care more than Ubuntu, because we are not all going to see it from that perspective. Others will speak from a diversity perspective. So it is important.
Yeah, I think, if purpose awakens energy and meaning and a desire and an understanding of where I fit in, then some part of a leader awakens. So I can't help but lead people when I have energy. I lead them somewhere, that energy goes somewhere. And it's a very exciting thing for us to discover people, or to find people who have discovered their purpose, because invariably they are in a leadership position already, and finding their purpose just ignites a different person. It changes everything they do, their attitude, their approach, their sense of fulfillment. They're more positive. So that makes the person a better leader, which is very exciting. So if I sat next to you on a flight to the US and I say, I have a question for you. What's your purpose in life? What's your answer?
I would have a story to tell about that, and I hope I implore you to just indulge me for a second. The story is told about the Westminster Cathedral in London, that at a specific point in time, a man showed up and said, I want to speak to the people who are part of building this beautiful monumental building. And so he went to the foreman and said, why are you laying bricks? And the foreman, who was there the day, said, well, I'm laying bricks because I have to feed my family. He found another person laying bricks and he said, why are you laying bricks? And he said, I'm laying bricks because I want to feed my family so that we can get out of poverty. The third person, he asked, why are you laying bricks? And the person said, I'm laying bricks because I wanted to be part of something bigger like this that would be able to be there in history and for my children to see. Now, be that as it may, all three people believed that they were driven by purpose, but purpose inherently very different in how we would categorize it from all the three people. How do I know what I'm here for? If you have had the time to sit and look at where the world is going, the one thing that is common is that we are all people with certain issues. Whether you go to Brazil or you go to, the UK or the US, social issues are constantly there. I have made it an undying effort to make a contribution towards social development because I believe that the only way we can harness true transformation is if we can deal with social issues first. Issues that might not be so difficult for those who are in better places, but us in Africa, extremely, like now, as we talk about things like the USAID, we're talking about HIV, we're talking about diseases, we are talking about first-line treatment medication. Those are areas that I intervene in because I feel that if we can be able to be responsible to people based on that social fabric, we can now talk about other things like the Constitution, and we can talk about the law and other things. But without that, we are sending people to their death. And by that means, it makes it very difficult for me to sit at a table and believe that I do not have a contribution to make. I think that's where my purpose is driven from, to elevate the discourse, to apply my interventions in areas where there has been inequality, to draw that into the attention of knowledge, to draw that into the attention of government and policy, both domestic and foreign.
So your impact will be broad as you participate in your purpose, and you are leading, no doubt, and we commend you for that. Everyone out there who are seeking their purpose, How did you find yours? How would you advise they find theirs? What are some steps, maybe some principles to remember as people are fumbling around life, trying to find their purpose?
So I started out as a UN gender military advisor. I spent a lot of time in hostile areas where I came across women who are in hostile areas as soldiers, or I came across communities in Africa that were completely not surviving or even in the bare minimum. And that gave me a little bit of light into some of the situations that I did not have prevalence to have. So it was a front row seat to really see what's happening on the ground in different places. And so when I got back to State Department, I think the first thing that was there was, what are the positions that can effect change where these struggles are? And I moved in line with that to the point of being a diplomat, because I felt largely that there were institutions that we could be able to then sit with. We could be able to talk around the table and say, this is the situation on the ground. And it is not representative of the members of parliament, because some of them do not come from that ground. And it has allowed me access to communities where I have not had to intervene on a whole of government, whole of society approach, but I've been able to change drastically across fabrics of how the social areas are in Sierra Leone, in Ghana, in Kenya, in Rwanda, in South Sudan, in South Africa, in Botswana, in Malawi, in Mozambique. And the question for me was, at the end of the day, what do I want to be remembered as? I want to be remembered as the person who was a brother, a friend, a father to every single community that had somebody who could voice their own issues and concerns, but also would step in at a time when they had lost all manner of hope. And that's where I found a calling for me to say, I think this is what I want to do. I want to change people's livelihood. I want to change where they are, even in transformation. When we talk about it, the greater good is to be able to streamline a level of equality for people. And that became a direct mandate, not on the basis of opportunity, but on the basis of, I want to do good in every community, not because of business, but because it makes sense to what I had seen all through the years.
So a good question for me to ask if I'm seeking my purpose, to say, what do I want to be remembered as? Who do I want to be remembered as? That might trigger me in the right direction to find my purpose.
It will trigger you. One is, who do I want to be remembered as? And the other is, why am I here? What am I here for? The understanding that you wake up every day, what do you wake up for? And what do you want? I again draw it back to the good book in the Bible, where it says, and when your time does come, you should show your grandchildren what you worked for. I sincerely believe that is purpose being questioned in us saying, can I show the works of my life? And can it make sense to people for them to look at and say, that there changed the trajectory of my growth, that there changed my ideals on education, that there changed my ideals on being a man of honor, or being a man of valor, or being a teacher, or being a student. If we can inspire a movement of change in the actions we take when we wake up in the morning and ask ourselves those two questions, you're well on your way to finding out what your purpose is.
Professor Tel Edgars, GBSH Consult Group. Thank you for being part of the solution, for living your purpose.
Thank you.
And for spending some time with us talking about this all-important topic.
Thank you so much, Adrian. It was only a pleasure. Thank you for the good work that you're doing. It is only relevant that we tell these stories and we tell them in whole. I look forward to hearing more of others who can share their parts and how we all come together as a universal consciousness.